Mike.
I'm Brad.
And this is Ministry Chemistry.
Neutron, proton, mass effect, lyrical oxidation, your irrelevant mass spectrograph, your electron volt, atomic energy erupting as I get all open on pow.
Here we go.
Happy New Year, everyone.
2020.
You're so excited about it.
You know what? I really love like fresh starts, blank slates, brand new years. Like I just feel like it
Crisp
really
sheets.
pressed sheets. It really is it's just a chance to start anew. I just feel it. Like I know God's mercies are new every morning, blah, blah, blah. But there's something about
Blah, blah, blah.
there's something
yeah,
to a
scripture.
new year. And even like a new month, right? A new week. But a new year is just so crisp and clean and like ready for the taking. And I'll be honest, my 2019, not stellar. Not one of my better years. So I was ready to see the calendar page turn.
Yeah.
Just me. I don't know. I
I
don't know
got
about you
you.
guys.
It was a good year in that we have a podcast, but other than that.
I know, right? So we set a goal to start a podcast, and we did it.
We did it.
And we're
Ta-da!
still doing it.
Yeah, it was a 2018 goal. It took a couple of months, but we did it. Yeah.
Launched it in 2019.
Yeah,
Thank you all
almost.
who've been
Thanks
listening.
for listening.
Who are
Almost a
listening
year
now. I know.
in. Almost.
And we set a 2020 goal. Should we tell them what it is, or should we just keep them waiting?
Keep them waiting.
Really?
Ooh.
Always keep them wanting
Because
more.
I really like our 2020 goal.
Okay.
I do too.
All right.
And they will too.
What is
Okay.
it?
Nope. Brad wants to keep it
Okay.
locked up for a minute.
So this is you won't find this surprising at all. I struggled with New Year's Day being like middle of the week.
Oh, that was
They should always move it to the weekend.
No, no, not that.
December 32nd, December 33rd. It's January 1st.
I don't like starting things in the middle, so I'm with you. Like I like New Year's,
Oh.
fresh things, but it took me like I had to wait till Monday. So basically, like I celebrated New Year's, but I had to wait until Monday the 6th to like really launch that new year and the things that I wanted to do.
Okay.
Because
so-
it's got to be at the beginning.
No, I get this. That's really funny. I felt weird about it being in the middle of the week because then it's just like, what do I do with my hands, right? Like, what do I do with this Thursday and Friday? Like, this is so weird.
I came back to work.
I mean, I did too. Like, you work on Thursday, you work on Friday, and then you're like, it's weekend again, which was great. But I was talking to some friends about this very thing, and they're starting the Whole 30 in
Yep.
this first month of the year.
Yep, my
And-
wife started it today, which means I started it today.
Right.
Sort
So,
of.
so they waited until Monday, January 6th to start the Whole 30. But from their perspective, they loved the wiggle room that they were able to meal prep over the weekend instead of like rushing to do it at the end of December to like start on January 1st. They meal prepped over the weekend. They've got like their lunches boxed up or ready to go. So they appreciated the cushion that came from a midweek January 1st to like an actual Monday start. I'll tell you, in the business world, in the working world, it's tough because I went back to work on Thursday.
Yep.
I was going through my emails. I was really being productive. I hadn't worked for a while, but other people were still away on vacation. So I've been waiting for a few days to like
Answer me.
get some answers. But I'm like, no, respect the space. Respect the space. It's fine. It's okay.
Some kids started back school on the Friday, like
I
the
know.
3rd.
It made
Yeah.
me sad for them.
It's so pointless.
It's so
Those
dumb.
kids are not even there.
No. And the teachers definitely aren't. They're like,
No.
we're working to the weekend, like more than we've ever have.
Yeah.
For sure. So one of my favorite things to do, and I really do like it, is look to like wise voices of their top 10 lists or their trends or their anticipations over the next year, their reflections on the previous year. So I thought it would be fun today to talk about one of those articles.
Let's do it.
Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I'm in.
So Carey
It's not
Nieuwhof.
tough.
It's not. Carey Nieuwhof wrote an article. If you don't know who Carey Nieuwhof is, he is a pastor in Canada. I actually don't know which province he's in, which I feel a little bad about because Canada's a really big, country.
He's in Ontario.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, like
British
Toronto area.
Okay.
I think he's
Thank
in.
you.
I think he's in Hamilton, which is kind of like. It's
He used
like
to be in Vancouver, I believe, but
Yeah, he's in a Toronto area.
Okay. So he's a pastor. He's also a leading voice on leadership and
Yeah.
like kind of the culture of the church, the shifting of trends.
Some names just for familiarity. Carey Nieuwhof was connected to Andy Stanley's church, right?
That's right.
Like came out of Andy Stanley's church.
Well,
More people are probably more familiar with Andy Stanley than Carey Nieuwhof at
Yes.
this point.
Andy Stanley's church is called North Point. I think Carey's church is a plant of North Point.
Yeah, it's Connexus. Excuse you.
Yeah, thank you. So, and Carey has a very successful podcast where he brings on a lot of big voices in not just Christianity, but just like leadership in general. He's written some excellent books. And this article to me was fascinating because the article is entitled 5 Disruptive Leadership Trends That Will Rule 2020. And I didn't realize he did this kind of projective sort of, I wanted to say projectile vomiting, which is not okay. Projective sort of writing.
That was January 2nd.
Yeah. But he's set out there 5 different trends that he believes are going to shape not just church culture and church ministry and leadership, but leadership in general.
He's done this for a few years now.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
I want to look back and see if how much of it has been right. Has been accurate.
I did that, and so I'm going to challenge our listeners to do the same and like see, did 2019 come to fruition? Because a couple things I was like, oh, that happened, and a couple things I was like, I didn't see that as much. But that's the fun of it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
To see how that goes. So today we're going to walk through all 5 of those. And what we want you to do is not only think about this from the context that we're going to talk about it under, but also where you are in your work setting, in your church setting, maybe even how your family does life. Because there's a couple of these that are really interesting when it comes to considering how my home is going to embrace this or maybe already lives into this. So the first disruptive trend is that the middle is disappearing. Mike, I think you had a really good way of describing what this means. What does it mean by the middle is disappearing is a trend of 2020?
Well, he talks about this in the article, but we see it most prominently right now and for the last couple of years politically. Mm-hmm. There's the moderates are kind of going to the opposite ends of the spectrum. You know, instead of the moderates or the centrists, as we might call them, you see more like hardcore conservative, hardcore progressive / liberal. So people, and he talks about this in the article, but people are going more towards the ends than you know
the middle.
Than the middle, which is kind of the happy median. The happy median is kind of going away, is what I read from the article. There's aspects of that, like I'm like, oh yeah, you can see that definitely. There's aspects of that I don't agree with as much.
Like which aspects do you not agree with?
Well, one of the things is like socioeconomically.
Okay.
So there's a perception that the middle is disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about income classes, you know, lower, middle, and wealthy or rich, but statistically speaking, like the middle class is just moving further towards the wealthy. Does that make sense? So it's not disappearing.
Right. It's just shifting.
It's shifting.
Interesting.
Which I think plays into other aspects of the article when he talks about goods, like goods and services. He says, you know, the middle is disappearing, but like, you know, Dollar Tree, Dollar General, Walmart are very successful. And then the opposite end of like your Burberry and Louis Vuitton, you know, the higher end. I think that is partially true because the middle is shifting and
to that upper echelon.
To the upper echelon. So the middle class is just can afford more luxury than the middle class used to be able to. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It absolutely does. It makes me wonder. So 2020 is an election year. And it's already, I mean, it's been forecast for the past 4 years that, you know, in 2015, if Trump wins 2016, he'll win 2020. And since he's been in office, even with all the tense moments, the disagreeable moments, the downright, I cannot believe we have a president who's doing this moments, every forecaster has still said, and he'll win in 2020, and he'll win in 2020.
Even though he's impeached.
Even though he's impeached, right. Which at the recording of this podcast, that still had not made its way to the Senate floor to a potential trial, just as long as everyone's keeping up with that. Impeachment just means you did something bad or we think you did something bad. Doesn't mean anything like removal from office. So anyway, when we think about this in terms of the middle disappearing, the dialogue is what we've seen disappear over 2019. And if the middle continues to disappear, I think robust, healthy dialogue dies with that. Because there's no middle ground. It's either right or wrong. It's either black or white. It's either
With me or against me.
yeah, with me or against me. I'm left, you're right. If you're not left, you must be right. Instead of, well, you're not left, but you're not really right. There's no space for that.
Gone.
So when you're raising up a generation of children, how do you teach them how to have conversations where there's no social or cultural context for that?
We don't.
You don't?
We just lock them in a room.
Well, I think it's just creating an openness for conversation, and see, it's tougher with my kids and their age. We're still in that molding process,
Yeah.
But
Where concrete right and wrongs matter.
yeah, absolutely. They don't understand gray concepts yet. They're just not. They're not there. Maturity wise. But I hope to be able to have open conversation with them about things that they're going to have beliefs and ideals about that I don't agree with. And Brad, you've experienced this already somewhat with your teens.
For those who don't know, Brad has teenage children. Mike has preschool and elementary age children. Yep. And I have preschool nieces and nephews. So these are the family populations we're working with.
It's a different conversation.
It is.
Yeah. It's totally different. I mean, I was just joking over the weekend. I said one of the things I hated that my mom told me was because I said so. So I was like, me and my wife are like, yeah, when we have kids, we'll never say that to them. Oh my God. I say that at least 5 times a day,
So you become your mother is what you're saying.
No, I try to okay, this is why we're doing, this is why
I say so.
Yeah.
But I still said so.
I'm very big on this is a consequence of your own actions. Mm-hmm. This is not a punishment. It's, you drove this yourself. I'm just the enforcer of that. But when there's an argument of, well, why? And eventually you get tired of asking why. You're like, just because I said so, know.
I intentionally asked how are you going to teach and raise a generation of children in this no middle world? Because I think you can parallel that to a congregation in a church, and to a community when you're a political activist or a politician running. Because I said so doesn't work. You're reaping the consequences of your own decision making and actions. But I think it could drive some influential leaders even more into a fear-based mentality than a stand your ground mentality.
Well, what's interesting is so Carey is talking more to church leaders more specifically in this article, which are obviously adults. I see the middle still existing in the next generation.
Oh, okay.
Because
it's become more sparse in older generations.
Well, our teens, so the small group that I help with, they're pretty open with their beliefs as far as what they think is biblical, but they have no problem engaging in friendships with people who don't share that belief. Yeah. But that's not an issue for them at all. It's just like, oh, well, you don't believe what I do? Okay, cool. Let's go watch a movie together.
Brad, do you see that too?
That's with my own children. Is very much that. At least my girls, especially my youngest, who's 14. She has friends that don't believe at all, and she's totally fine with that. And they have amazing conversations and amazing relationships. But yeah, it's the fact that we talked just this morning about some conversations that Mike had with some older people within the Nazarene faith, and the fact that they're willing to sever friendships because of those
disagreements.
Yeah, not seeing eye to eye on certain things is, even to us who are kind of in between those two worlds of the teens and the older generation, we can't believe that friendships can be severed just because you don't agree with somebody. Doesn't make any sense.
No. We disagree on this one topic. Well, we can't be friends now.
Well, that
What's the topic you're holding so close that you can't continue loving someone you've previously loved until this disagreement?
that everyone has a litmus test
Yes.
for who they're going to engage in a relationship with, whether you do that consciously or subconsciously. What I've seen in our teenagers, they have one test. Do you care about me?
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
What else you care about is inconsequential to our relationship.
How interesting.
I think we probably had less than our parents did, and less than
Less litmus
than
tests?
and less than their parents did. You know, I mean, there was a time like litmus test included a broad range of things, like where are you politically, where are you spiritually, where are you, economically, and some of that is like just what neighborhood you happen to cohabitate in or whatever. But now, I mean, our teenagers, it just appears to me all they care about is, do you care about me?
Yeah.
So the second trend he says he sees disrupting leadership into 2020 is that do it yourself is giving way to what he has titled DIFM, which is do it for me. So he gives the example in the article, which we're posting this on our Facebook page if you follow us there. It's the age of pre-sliced apples. No longer will I buy an apple and slice it myself. I'd much prefer someone else slice it for me. It's faster. It's ready when I want it to be ready. And yeah, it might cost a little more, but whatever. How do you guys see
Sometimes
this
a
play
lot
out?
more.
Sometimes a lot more. No, so my friends who are starting the Whole30, they bought pre hard boiled eggs. And I said, why? Hard boiled eggs aren't hard to make. And they're like, you know what though? It's just ready. It's just ready for us to go. The cost difference wasn't that much. Like, this just makes sense for
Just
us.
can't stand 3 minutes.
But do it yourself is giving way to, can you do it for me? I have a family member who owns a restaurant, and he recently engaged Uber Eats to do delivery for his restaurant. And he comes in to a family setting, and he looks at me because I'm just a person who will converse with him like this. And he says, your generation is the dumbest generation I have ever seen. And I said, ooh, what did we do now? And he said, you'll pay, and it's a sandwich shop. He's like, you'll pay almost double for a sandwich to have someone bring it to you than you will just to get up off your lazy butts and come into my store and buy the sandwich yourself. And I said, yeah, yeah, that's right. And he goes, how stupid do you have to be? But it totally fits with this.
Oh, yeah.
I can get it myself versus, no, I'd love someone to just bring it to me.
Well, that has a lot to do with the busyness of our generation.
I was going to say that.
And
yeah.
further down the line. I mean, you see far fewer single income homes. Almost all homes are both spouses bringing home the bacon.
Yeah.
There's a lot more shared responsibility within the home. I know my wife would kick my butt if I walked in from work and sat down and watched a hockey game versus like helping with dinner or helping with the dishes or, and we're teaching our kids that, this is just a random example, but yesterday, my son was in the bathtub getting ready for bed, and I go downstairs and there was a mess, and Sadie just happened to be there, and I was like, hey, can you help clean this up? And she's like, that's not my mess, it's my brother's. And I'm like, well, and it was a good object lesson of, this family's a team. It doesn't matter who made the mess. You're here now. We're going to clean it up. But I mean, you see that in just all aspects of our lives. Kids are busier. They have a lot more on their plate. So convenience is worth the price, in a lot of instances. Now, for me, I'm pretty frugal, so I'll slice my own apples.
Right.
Thank you very much.
I'll boil my
your
own
own
eggs. But yeah, I mean, there's some stuff that absolutely we pay for the convenience of,
So how do you deliver church? How do you make church more convenient?
Oh man, that is you're gonna push some buttons with that, with even the question.
If this is a trend, our leaders need to be aware of the trend, because if we're trying to reach folks and we need to reach them versus create a place where they can reach us, I think this falls right in line with that kind of consideration.
Reading the article, that's immediately where I went to. Being a youth pastor and thinking of my weekly service time, which are usually Wednesday nights, and looking at attendance on those nights, I struggled with, do I blow it up and do something different? Do I have to augment it with quote unquote convenient times and convenient spaces for smaller groups to get together, which we've kind of done to some extent? And how do I don't know, make that in a sense palatable for church leadership? Is that okay? And if it's okay, we're Nazarenes. We love our numbers. How do I count it? How do I keep track of that so we can give an appropriate and proper accounting to leadership within the denomination?
How the shift in your structure,
Yeah.
which is responding to cultural trends, still creates the same productivity or what product output that is expected. That's really interesting.
That's where my mind went as I read.
What I'm honing in on is, okay, if we recognize these cultural trends, or we try to embrace some of these trends and use them for our betterment to reach others, there's going to have to be a convincing of an establishment to say, hey, this is the direction folks are heading, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. We're going to be better to acknowledge it than to sit by and just think, well, they should do this, when they don't have to do anything.
Right.
The struggle for me, and this is, I'm thinking about it now, and as I was reading it, and this is something that I think the church has to buck the trend on, is the do it for me culture. Every culture has always longed for community. And people in the church, that's a big reason why they continue to come. There's a communal aspect to it. The problem with the DIY versus do it for me is, okay, I want to come in, I want to sit down on Sunday morning, I want you to spoon feed me scripture, and then I want to just go about my week. And there's no DIY, do it yourself, self-filling of spirituality. There's no continuation of reading scripture and praying and fasting and those things that are biblical aspects to individual spirituality, which goes hand in hand with communal. It's not one or the other, it's both.
Yeah.
And the risk that the church faces if we fall into the trend of do it for me is, okay, if I spoon feed people everything I want them to know on Sunday morning or Wednesday night, and I don't give them something to chew on that they have a thirst to dive deeper into
independently,
right? Then we're gonna have another generation of immature Christians.
Yeah, I can't fast for someone else.
Yeah,
I can't pray the prayers of your heart because I don't know your heart.
right.
And that's a good point. And even with it's silly, the pre-sliced apple kind of thing, but why would I slice my apples if someone slices them for me exactly as I like them? But that doesn't translate when it comes to the need in our souls for community and connection with God. So what about this third trend? The third trend is that insight and access have become more valuable than content. Basically, he's saying what's going to disrupt leadership is you can't just put out information anymore. You've got to provide insight and wisdom, because that's what people don't have immediate access to. I mean, if anything resonates most to me in this article in terms of where the church is needed, it's on this point.
Yeah.
Where else are you going to seek and find true wisdom and insights into the information you can find anywhere?
One of the things I think he goes into under this subheading is focused individual discipleship. And Jesus set the model of this.
Yes.
Large crowds, but he had 12. From the 12, he had 3. From the 3, he had 1. Like there is a biblical model to pouring into the people that you can, and that applies for anyone in any walk of life, especially within the Christian community. Whether you're a lead pastor or youth pastor or just someone who's figuring it out, there should be someone alongside of you, someone who knows more than you do, who can pour into you, and someone who knows less than you do that you can pour into. That is a biblical model of discipleship, and that's kind of what he's talking about here. Instead of just handing someone a pamphlet or a Bible or a book, read it with them, start a devotional with someone, sit over a cup of coffee and share your thoughts with each other.
And I would say if you are sitting here listening or you're reading something where you essentially are like, I mean, I pour into others, but I'm kind of at a place in my life where I don't need someone to pour into me, or no one can pour into me because I've just reached this level of knowledge and wisdom that is pretty unmatched.
Which is proof that you need someone to pour into.
Yeah, I would say you've just shut the door on self-growth.
Oh, yeah.
You have just capped
Boom.
your capacity, your own capacity. You've done that because you can walk with someone 20 years younger than you and learn insights and wisdom if you're listening and walking with. Now, should they be the primary person to pour in? We can have the age debate another day. But the point is keeping yourself open to disciple someone in a very intimate, vulnerable kind of space of authenticity. And you're right. That pathway goes both ways. I need poured into, and then I should be pouring into someone else. He talks about how much would you pay to see someone speak in a crowd of 10,000 versus what would you do to access one of your mentors, a voice, a leader, one-on-one and get that conversation space. And it's a great question.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, who in my life would I want one-on-one access to learn from? And then what kind of conversations would I want to have different from maybe their main stage presentation to a crowd?
That brings up a good question. You don't have to answer it now, but so you can't use Jesus as a cop-out.
I talk to Jesus every day.
If you could
we one-on-one every day.
Yeah, if you could sit down for a coffee or a Coke, in Renee's case,
thank you,
with anyone, who would that person be?
Mm-hmm.
That can totally be a rhetorical question, but
no, I have an answer. I've thought
I don't
about
think
it.
I do.
I don't either.
Is it a dead or alive thing, or would they have to still be alive?
Non-fictional, dead or alive.
Yeah. Well, because the other place I've gone is, let's say I won the lottery one day. I love playing that game in my brain. Like, if I won the lottery, what would I do with that? I would want to talk to some of the leading philanthropists to say, I have this money. How can I give it away and invest it well so it's not squandered and it really makes an impact over time and continues helping people beyond just the initial give? Those would be conversations I'd want to have if I won the lottery. Maybe I should talk to someone about winning the lottery first. Maybe that's the person I should talk to.
It wouldn't be two Nazarenes.
I mean, if you dabble in that sort of thing, that's all I'm saying. Mike's now questioning how many lottery tickets I've ever bought in my life. I haven't really.
Really?
Only on the mega super, everyone could win this, right? Trend number 4. Focus is a new superpower.
What a perfect segue. What a perfect
Love
segue.
it.
Prove it.
Brad, how's your focus? How you doing?
What are we talking about?
Yeah. The disruptive leadership trend is that being able to focus is actually a superpower because so few people seem to be able to focus anymore.
I find this in just conversations with our teens on a Wednesday night. It's amazing how if you're having a one-on-one conversation with somebody and people are always walking up trying to get their time, they want to ask you questions. If you look away from the conversation that you're having, that whole conversation loses something. But if you the thing I really struggle with, because I am a squirrel. I mean, I'm always I'm always looking at other things happening in the room, but I've really, over the past probably 5 years, have really taken this thought of the ministry of presence and just being fully engaged in a conversation, being able to hold eye contact through the entire thing, no matter what's going on around me. Having that connection has changed how open kids are with me, and knowing that I'm locked in, I'm paying attention to what you're talking about. So I think it is a superpower because it's
People
such
don't
a
seem to be able to
struggle
do it.
for me.
Yeah.
And I'm going into the conversation saying, do not break eye contact. And so, yeah, there's so much vying for our attention that it's of, I don't know, the utmost importance.
Oh, let me tell you a new pet peeve of mine. It's not new, but I've not shared it in this space. With smartwatches, when I'm talking to, and I've noticed this specifically with young adults, I would say 20-somethings and college-age students, if their smartwatch goes off with a text, they'll look at their watch. So they've, quote-unquote, put their phones away to be present. But if that watch beeps or flashes, they scroll and they check. And it to me, it's just, you should just have your phone out.
Yeah.
Because I can watch the whole body language shifts to laser sharp focus on that watch now.
Am
and
I
I've
boring
lost you? Yeah. Sorry.
Are we taking up too much of your time?
But also, like, I put my phone away in conversations because I want to be, like you say, like, intentionally engaged. It would make me want to take my watch off too. In fact, I have a friend who will take their watch off, even though it's supposed to help with fitness and stuff. But like I want to be here. I don't even want the vibration of my wrist.
We're not getting our steps in right now.
So I'm taking it off. You were sharing about a church that requires a certain amount of hours in a day for their people to be present.
Well, it was not a church. It was basically a consulting firm.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I want to go to that next because I think that's going to align with this focus too. But if you are listening and you're thinking about when are your most focused hours of the day, when do you really get the most stuff done, when are you most productive, I would encourage you to figure out in your work settings how to capitalize on what you know about yourself and make a case to your supervisor to say, look, we all know focus is a struggle around here, or maybe a struggle for you, but here's where I found my highest productivity. And if you're a leader of other people, a manager of other people, have the conversation with your team and say, when do you find yourself most productive? Because let's capitalize on your productivity since focus is so tough these days. So the last one, and I know we're running a bit longer than we normally do, but we really wanted to talk about these with you. Freedom and autonomy are the next generation's currency. That's the next disruptive trend. And he specifically hones in on an office setting. So Mike, talk about, that idea of when to be present in an office setting versus not.
Well, the person who was talking about this basically, runs a consulting firm, and it's kind of a hybrid approach of instead of having a standard 9 to 5, we want people to be present, and obviously we want people to be productive. And I'm sure there's a balance of some people could get everything they need done in 20 hours a week. Mm-hmm. Some people, it takes 50. So we're going to balance this out. We're going to have a time requirement. He talks about this in the article, like, which is more important, time or productivity. But the person running the consulting firm was like, you know what? We want everyone present during this group of hours every day. I think it was like 10 to 2 or something like that. We're going to have a meeting around 10:30. We just want a physical presence during those times. But other than that, kind of set your own schedule. Mm-hmm. If you want to come in at 7 and work till 4, go for it. If you want to be here right at 10 and work later into the evening, that's kind of on you. That was like 3 years ago when I heard.
But it doesn't have to be solid time in the office.
Not necessarily. No, they wanted you. He wanted you to be present, physically present during those 10 to 2. And I think that there was an office community aspect to that too. Like they had meetings and and there were things that they needed people present for, but they also realized, like, if everyone is completely autonomous, then something about our culture breaks down. I mean, you really don't even have a culture at that point.
You lose the team, you lose the family.
Right.
You do.
all that.
Right. So there is, and this is where I told you beforehand, there were aspects of the article that I disagreed with. So the completely autonomous, especially in a church culture, I mean,
Is counterproductive.
it's important for a staff and a leadership team to build community with each
That's
other
right.
in order for that to pour out onto the entire congregation. How can you do that if everyone's working from home or from a coffee shop?
Well, in a real community, not just we gather for staff meetings to get through a task list.
Right.
Yeah.
Or not
But-
just we're all physically present in the same building,
right.
but we're not really communing or congregating or whatever, you know?
And if you hate, dislike, or it is draining for you to exist in community with your work colleagues, I think that's a question mark. Then what do you need and where do you need to be? Because most 98%, I would say, people, that's a made up percentage, have to work. And so what does work look like? And what does community look
Unless
like?
they win the lottery.
Unless they win the lottery. There it is, full circle. One of the things with this whole idea of freedom is Carey Nieuwhof says there's a delightful surprise in store when you give great leaders freedom. Most will give you back far more than you expected in return. I have a friend who works for a division of GE, and I forget when, it was in the recent couple past years. GE got rid of all personal and sick leave. Nobody gets a set number of days for vacation, and no one gets a set number of days for sick leave. You take what you need. And that's the company line. If you need a 10-day vacation, you take a 10-day vacation. If you get sick or your kid gets sick, you take the time. You can work from home. That's involved in that too. The idea is they've seen a rise in productivity because they saw this in other areas because people don't think they deserve X number of days
Right.
and take it when they can't. And they do the work because they've given the great leaders the freedom to do the work that needs to be done, which people know needs to be done. And it weeds out the people who aren't going to be productive and successful anyway. And I found that fascinating. And his family life has just really gone to a next level because he's able to be present in places that otherwise he wasn't going to have to be if he had to be in the office from 7 to 5 or whatever
I think
it
the
is.
bigger aspect to this, which he doesn't really mention in the article, surprisingly, there's a huge trust component to implementing
Yes.
that style of an office culture. Because if I'm the leader and I say, you know what, you don't have to be physically present here every day. We're going to set some boundaries to that. Like we want everyone present one day a week, whatever that is. You're trusting. Now it's going to show up down the line whether or not people are actually doing what they're supposed to do. But on the front end of that, you're trusting that, okay, Renee, if you work from home, if that's your happy space, you can set your time, you're the most productive. I'm trusting that you're actually going to be doing what you're supposed to
Right.
be doing instead of watching Netflix all day.
Oh, yeah. There
Which
has to
I
be an
think is a-
intrinsic drive, motivation, and then just a work ethic.
Which I think is a bigger component to that return on productivity
Absolutely.
than actually setting whether or not you're going to have office hours. That's only a piece of the puzzle. The bigger puzzle is, okay, do I trust the people who I'm leading or not?
Well, and how much are we living in luxury to have this kind of a conversation? 1, 2, to talk about leadership in such a I get to cast my eyes into something happening and be a leader and really reflect on that and understand how that works in my world when so much of the workforce doesn't have this luxury because guess what? Nurses can't work from home.
Right.
Firefighters can't work from home. The folks that collect our trash can't work from home. Those who make the chairs we're sitting in, that just can't be hours that they flex time all the time. So much of the working world, I think, can't relate to this piece of a disruptive trend because guess what? In their work environments and settings, so many rely on them to be present in the places where the work is happening. And that's something churches need to take into account too. When we talk about their middle disappearing, I think intellectually the middle is disappearing too. Because you've either got the folks who can sit and talk about leadership strategies, and then the folks who are like, that's not relevant to me.
Right.
I got to get a day's job done to bring home a paycheck to feed kids and put food on a table. And that matters too, to connect with.
That's a very good point.
So what's disrupting your life in this new year? In a good way, but maybe not. And how can you use it for more good to be the best version of yourself in the places that you get to be and the people you get to be around? These are our starting questions for 2020. We're so glad you're listening. For Ministry Chemistry, I'm Renee.
Still Mike.
And Brad.
We'll talk to you next time.